Yo, Bromandos! Today I'll be reviewing Red Dawn, the 1984 film that's remembered fondly by soy boy critics and Antifa hipsters alike as a big fuck you commies everywhere. In an alternate history of the Cold War, NATO dissolves, leaving the United States to stand alone. Famine-stricken and desperate for resources, a Soviet coalition invades, blitzing up out of Mexico and cutting down from the Bering Strait. Caught in the crossfire, a group of teenagers from Calumet, Colorado quickly find themselves stranded behind enemy lines. Their lives have been destroyed, their families are lost to them. All they have left is the burning desire for revenge. This may come as a surprise, but actually there is so much that I can say about this movie that I'm going to attempt to do so while remaining conscious and respectful of our time. On one hand, yeah, it's a PG-13 popcorn action flick, a teenage Rambo for its time, and although the tagline was, "In our time, no foreign army has ever occupied American soil until now," it could have easily been swapped for the much pithier mantra, "Kill a commie for mommy." However, Red Dawn poses interesting hypothetical questions that are very rare for a Hollywood film, and to this day pissed a lot of people off, namely film critics. The co-writer and director John Milius is often portrayed as Tinseltown's right-winged renegade, the one-dimensional exception to the rule, who despite being a total lunatic, achieves success because of his friendships with heavy hitters like Steven Spielberg and Francis Coppola. And Red Dawn solidified that legacy long before the dude's career had even ended.
The director of Conan, Red Dawn, and co-writer of Apocalypse Now, Milius is proudly militaristic, and he's also one of Hollywood's most famous conservatives.
Hollywood was always left-wing, and I was always a pariah. Culturally, I am uncool. I felt I was a more traditional American conservative, that I was, more in the line of the tradition of rugged individualism.
The man is both a lifelong connoisseur of military history and warrior poet philosophies, giving him the unique ability to lend narrative strength to a particular kind of film in an industry usually packed with a red blood cell count akin to tofu. But back to Red Dawn. At the expense of risking cliche, I have to begin this review by clarifying what Red Dawn isn't. It is not a film about the Soviet invasion of America. That is simply the backdrop of the story. It is a story about a group of teenagers who become partisan fighters. And that's an important distinction to make because Red Dawn never attempts to be a large-scale war film. Why focus on a small town in Colorado near the Arapahoe National Forest? Well, for starters, it's a hell of a lot more scenic than Texas, but more importantly, it also happens to be the general location of the headquarters of America's 4th Infantry Division, a strategic stronghold that any foreign army looking to invade the Southwest couldn't afford to avoid. And this is actually addressed in the film. Once the communist forces have taken over Calumet, a soldier reports to Colonel Bea that they are suffering a counterattack from American tanks, the remnants of which the characters walk by later through a sort of a vehicle graveyard, which proves to me that while Red Dawn might not be the war film people expect, it's not the brainless action fest it's ceaselessly accused of being. By the way, that Bea guy looks kind of familiar. Where have we seen this cat before? Oh yeah. The cast is made up of a slew of faces you're bound to recognize, even if a lot of them were still transitioning out of puberty at the time. Patrick Swayze, Charlie Sheen, C. Thomas Howell, Jennifer Grey, and a very young-looking Leah Thompson.
Things are different now.
Yeah, if you think this is weird, sweetheart, wait a few more years till you're dating ducks.
Howard, you really are the worst.
Besides Ron O'Neal, the older cast includes Powers Booth as an easygoing Air Force colonel shot down behind enemy lines, William Smith as a convincing Russian Spetsnaz wielding a rare Jatomatic SMG, of which only 400 were ever made, and Harry Dean Stanton as Jed and Matt's father in one harrowing scene inside a re-education camp. Now, I'll never forget the first time I saw Red Dawn at 3 a.m. with a grandfather who was letting a 5-year-old stay up way past his bedtime. But this scene actually took some honestly took a while to grow on me over the years, and I finally realized why. If it felt sort of off-putting to you as well, perhaps it's because it's a raw display of masculine emotion, something we don't see a whole lot of in film, and that's something that's actually grown on me, something I've come to appreciate that this film handles well. It also does a great job of telling the plight of a freedom fighter. Red Dawn is, after all, a Vietnam film in reverse. The Wolverines are like patriotic American Viet Cong or Castro's revolutionaries, and there are literal tips of the hat to other famous guerrilla fighters such as Lawrence of Arabia and the French Resistance. Milius also clearly took some inspiration from the resistance sequences of another famous war film, The Longest Day.
Jean a de longues moustaches. Je répète, Jean a de longues moustaches.
John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory.
One scene that's almost universally decried in reviews for being edgy, I guess, is the deer killing moment. Robert makes his first kill, a deer the boys will use for food, and Jed and Matt convince him to drink the deer's blood, an initiation ritual often thought to be practiced by various Native American tribes as a way of giving thanks to the animal's spirit. This scene is typically lambasted by beta critics as being ridiculous, over the top, a shameless attempt to up the macho meter, but actually, it's symbolic of the character arc that Robert will go through later when he turns from being just a regular high school kid into a bloodthirsty killer. His character is in direct contrast to another named Danny, who, although he supports the group, questions whether they're doing the right thing by killing so many people. And I think this contrast, along with Milius's knowledge of military matters, helps Red Dawn be a small, contained, but successful war film. The tanks you see in the picture aren't real Russian tanks. They were made per Milius's specifications since he knew all the parts required down to the serial numbers, yielding a final result so accurate that the CIA showed up on set one day wondering how they got them. But of course, Red Dawn isn't a perfect film. I do have some criticisms for it. Before I get into the criticisms that are usually made about it, and well, you'll see what I mean. Admittedly, some of the scenes are a bit overacted.
You son of a bitch!
And as much as I like the contrast between Danny and Robert, I don't really believe the arc of the main characters, Jed and Matt, which at the very end, and heads up, this criticism does contain spoilers, at the very end, Matt points out that they could still make it to the mountains and escape, to which Jed responds, "I love you, Matty. It's hard being brothers. Okay, I guess it's time to go die now." Yeah, it's a little forced. There's also a feeling of cheapness that kind of peppers the opening scene when the Russians paratroop in and attack the school. It comes in the form of a really obvious continuity error with the dead kid in the window, the squibs that go off late on the teacher's chest, and an RPG that's just fired randomly down into the school opening that never impacts its target. 3 kind of cheap things just right there in a row, and it made me question the integrity of this opening scene. But then I thought about, the validity of the scenario itself. Like, let's see. Is there any historical precedence for communists massacring civilians? Yeah, let me think about that one. And now, Bromandos, is the part of my reviews where I typically go on a rant about whatever I'm reviewing and matters of public opinion. And we're not breaking the tradition today with Red Dawn. Oh no. Because when it was released, Red Dawn was subject to a bunch of vitriolic propaganda from the media.
The critics hated me. They always said, this guy's dangerous. He's subversive.
Jingoistic, flag-waving film, masturbatory Reaganite fantasies. And if you don't care, you don't care. But look, like a lot of channels right now are taking Lucasfilm and the media to the mat when they call them misogynists for not liking Rey and The Last Jedi. I review older films on my channel, so I'm going to dispel the bullshit surrounding Red Dawn. Okay, well, for starters, I don't know how a film succeeds in being jingoistic when it's about your own country being invaded. But Red Dawn is not pro-war. Milius has said that it's not meant to be pro-war, it was meant to serve as a warning. It shows a group of kids transitioning from high school students to vulgar killers, and the plot is punitive because at the end they pay the price for allowing their hatred to consume them. Now it is true that Milius did receive help in pre-production with developing the scenario for which Red Dawn could occur from General Alexander Haig, who was on the MGM board of directors for some reason, and at some point I believe was also an advisor to Nixon. So that is true, and Haig became very obsessed with seeing this film, to completion because he did want to see it become a pro-war sort of flag-waving film. And this made Milius very uncomfortable. According to Peter Bart, the vice president of MGM's production, it made Milius so uncomfortable that the end result of this relationship was the Department of Defense refused to help Red Dawn at all, which actually wound up tripling its budget from $6 million to $18 million by the end. So it's not right-wing propaganda funded by the Reagan administration, and it's not pro-war either. But wait for this, some outlets accused Red Dawn of, wait for it, you'll never guess, but I'm sure you'll love it, accused Red Dawn of being racist and xenophobic because some of the Soviet coalition invading America is made up of Latin Americans from Cuba and Nicaragua and some other place. Yeah, how is this film racist and xenophobic when it goes out of its way to give the bad guy, Colonel Beya, a fucking redemption arc? I swear to God, the New York Times is just so shitty. They're just so shitty. They were never good. In fact, the best review I could find of Red Dawn came from the libertarian thinker Murray Rothbard, who pointed out that the biggest flaw of the film is that in real life, a real guerrilla warfare scenario, the resistance movement would grow. It would gain new fighters instead of being slowly killed off by attrition. Yeah, sure, I'm a little biased, but guess what? So is everyone else. I say his review is the best, so you can find a link to it below in the description. I want to conclude this rant by pointing out that I am so sick and freaking tired of the double standard with which our culture treats communism as if it's some sort of edgy idealism we should aspire to. Look, I have spent my entire life killing thousands of Nazis in various video games, watching an untold number of stories where Nazis are the villains and listening to people endlessly talk about how the Nazis were evil. I get it already. The Nazis were evil. Duh. All the while, the evils of communism are conveniently ignored. Red Dawn didn't piss critics off because it was just another dumb movie for teenage boys. No, it pissed people off because it showed what life under communism would be like, and it demonstrated that America will remain free from foreign tyranny as long as behind every blade of grass there's an American wielding an AR-15.
Red Dawn really rang their bell. I didn't think that it would cause such a cheap shot reaction from the left. It was not their political view, and it was to be suppressed and made fun of and belittled, which is the way the left deals with everything. I've been blacklisted probably since then, I've been blacklisted as surely as anybody in the 50s. I should have made 20 more films.
The most unrealistic thing about Red Dawn ain't its implausible scenario where World War III actually occurred and America did get invaded through its impenetrable Mexican border. No, the most unrealistic thing about it is that if such an invasion ever occurred, it would make it 15 minutes outside of El Paso. And now with that out of the way, it's time for If It Were Made Now, the part of the show where I pitch the film I'm reviewing if it were made now. Except Red Dawn did get remade, so instead, it's time for Red Dawn 2012 Mini-Meter Movie Review. I really didn't think this one out. Okay, so Red Dawn 2012. Alright, so another complaint commonly made about the original is it's so dated because of the Cold War concept. Well, okay then, get a load of this pile of shit. In the first 3 minutes, we have Obama and Hillary discussing foreign policy and the escalating prospect of war with North Korea. Yeah, this one doesn't date itself at all. After that, we're introduced to the new Matt, played by some Disney dickhead, and about 10 minutes of forced This Is America small town throwaway scenes that are so cringy they'd make Reddit proud, before they finally get on with the freaking invasion. And let me tell you something about this invasion sequence. Even for 2012, the CGI looks pretty retarded. It's a bunch of copy and paste paratrooper and plane effects that look about as convincing as clip art. Within about 5 minutes, the North Koreans, yeah, you know, that country that's about the size of Walmart and fields the yearly income of a single mother working the cash register. Well, yeah, that nation, yeah, in about 5 minutes, less, the North Koreans have completely invaded and positioned roadblocks everywhere. And after this invasion, they escape and rendezvous with Douche Company. Disney dickhead's stick blonde girlfriend gets captured, you know, but Jed tells him not to worry, you see, because she's a fighter. Chris Hemsworth is actually okay here, though. I mean, he's a veteran, and that means his character likes to swill beer and talk down to everybody. And from there, this update just tries desperately to separate itself from the original while still copying scenes from it in order to fill screen time and sell tickets. For example, we get this montage that shows them becoming hardened soldiers and fighting the Koreans, blowing shit up and killing people. But then later, Robert's character, played by some other child actor experiment, gets squeamish over shooting a deer. Like, it's just a huge mess. It's a huge mess with nothing to say. There's no anti-communist or authoritarian message being shared, and it doesn't really show Americans being victimized all that much, really, so there's no real reason to care about the invasion at all. In fact, it does the opposite even. There's a scene where the new Wolverines get hungry, so they decide to rob a subway at gunpoint. These are the heroes of the Red Dawn remake, robbing their fellow Americans being held under occupied territory at gunpoint. And just to be clear, I don't find this offensive. I'm mentioning it because I want to highlight as clearly as possible just how much modern films, and this movie in particular, could not suck more balls if it tried. And just to rub salt in the wound like modern Hollywood loves to do, try listening to the behind-the-scenes interviews with the cast, who all seem to agree that the problem their remake will rectify is the original's lack of realism. Bitch, the original cast had to go through 6 weeks of guerrilla warfare training. Their instructors were Green Berets who only fed them when they felt like the actors deserved it. Some of the scenes were filmed in weather so freezing they had to wear Everest assault suits. This gaggle of prissies hung out with a few army dudes for a couple of weeks firing blanks. Yeah, I'm probably exaggerating, but you can take a look for yourself. The behind-the-scenes footage is on YouTube. Anyway, they saved the girlfriend. And with all that being said, I give Red Dawn the official Macho meter ranking of Joseph McCarthy was right and Che Guevara sucks cocks in hell. That's right, I said it. I got no regrets. I apologize for nothing. Thanks for watching, Bromandos. Hey, especially if you stuck with me to the end, even while I ranted about another film from the 80s. I knew Red Dawn was divisive. I just didn't realize how much bullshit surrounded this flick. God, so much bullshit. Anyway, if you like this review, you can, of course, subscribe and share it with friends. Always super helpful and appreciated. As well as follow me on websites that don't suck, such as Gabmine, Steemin, and BitChute. I want to give a quick shout out to my bromando TransTech. Red Dawn is actually one of his favorite films, and he hates modern Hollywood as much as I do. So check out his channel too if you want. Once again, I'm Thompsonator. I'll see you again soon, bromandos, for more action.
Avenge me! Avenge me!